Oh my god, I love this game. One of the most important aspects of a game is the moment-to-moment gameplay. How does it feel to get from point A to point B? How does it feel to fight a room full of goons? How does it feel to win a match? All these things fall under the umbrella of game feel. An extremely technical term, I know. Ever since getting my hands on the closed playtest, Mecha BREAK has achieved a full-on monopoly on my brain and I can't stop playing it. The reason why I suspect that's the case is because the game feel is among the absolute best among the market right now, even as a beta. I'm going to be breaking down exactly why that is using a condensed version of Steve Swink's book on the very topic. I hope that by the end of this video, you guys will give the game a try when it fully comes out. It is some of the most fun I've had in a PvP game in recent memory. So sit back, stay hydrated, and most importantly, I hope you all enjoy. I'm sure we all know how frustrating it can be when a game's controls aren't exactly calibrated. But a game managing to make their controls feel both predictable and responsive to the inputs created by the player is a lot more challenging than it first appears. And the reason for that is, well, humans aren't as accurate or as quick with making inputs as we'd like to imagine. A lot of work that goes into designing a game's control scheme is making up for that discrepancy. Just as a simple example, pressing two buttons at the same time appears to be a trivial task, insultingly so. But the fact of the matter is, pressing two buttons on the exact same frame isn't nearly as simple as it appears to be. Because your computer is far more precise than you could ever be, you could actually be pressing one button first before the other, giving you at most 3 different results at seemingly random despite trying to do only one. This will feel awful to anybody, no matter the case. The art here is making it seem like the player is perfectly in control, despite the several micro mistakes they're actually making every time they're responding to the game state. A mechanic in Mecha BREAK that does this wonderfully is the game's lock-on system. No matter what you have to say about the game, one thing cannot remain understated. The game is fast. Because the speed of the game is practically breakneck with everyone jumping everywhere and boosting all over the place, the game can't exactly give you a normal aiming reticle that any other shooter has. It's just not practical. Instead, what the game has opted for is an aiming zone. Instead of aiming directly at what you want, the game will automatically track an enemy that's within the targeting area in front of you, prioritizing the ones in the middle. This system allows players a relatively generous area where they can track their enemy and let their guns do the rest. Because this aiming reticle shows you exactly what you're shooting at, you're not really left confused as to why you're not managing to hit the death machine that's dancing around you at the speed of sound. Speaking of speed, despite how huge the machines you're piloting are, it never really feels sluggish when you're in the midst of combat. This is true for the lightest and fastest mechs like Falcon, who can fly across the sky both in their mech mode and in their jet mode, to even the heaviest and slowest mechs like Tricera, my beloved, the quad minigun toting tank of a mech. The reason why that is due to the universal boost mechanic. Every mech can boost in every direction. Holding the button down lets them go absolutely flying in the direction you're holding. Jumping works in the exact same way, you press the button and get a boost. Using either will drain your energy gauge, leaving you high and dry if you use it all up. At no point while playing did I ever feel like the movement was limited by the game itself. I was only really held back by my own player skill and my management of the energy gauge. At no point did I try to boost in a direction and ended up going somewhere else entirely. And at no point did my inputs get snuffed despite the frantic nature of the gameplay. This once again reinforces how well the devs designed the responsiveness of the controls, and it does a lot to keep me completely in a flow state where I'm focused on taking down other pilots and completing objectives. It's the clarity of these design decisions that shows that you are in complete control of your mech. You're not left floundering around fighting with a bad camera lock on, and you're not stuck trying to tap dance in the direction of where you want your mech to go. It's an amazing effect where the game allows players to have tons of skill expressions through their mobility without making it too frustrating to actually hit them with your weapons. It's a best of both worlds situation where winning is absolutely reliant on your skill. And now that I've mentioned it, let's talk more about player skill. Before we do though, I would appreciate it if you guys left a sub. If you have any other games you believe have perfectly designed game feel, comment it down below. Seeing new opinions is always a treat, and I'm always happy to foster a community who shares their passions. With that out of the way, let's continue. In the landscape of gaming that's been graced by the existence of the Soulsborne series, it's difficult not to step into discussion of complexity and challenge. But why do people crave challenge so much? What is there to gain from throwing yourself into the meat grinder? While I've outlined this in my boss video, it is essentially the chase for catharsis, for glory. I ask you this: do you find satisfaction in drinking water? Imagine just walking to your kitchen, grabbing a glass, and just drinking it. Is there any real satisfaction in that? No, not really. But imagine having ran a race, or participate in a sport, or being out in hot weather. Isn't that glass of water just all the more beautiful? This is what challenge adds to games. To have that extra layer of satisfaction, one must endure the journey and the difficulty in order to get the glory of earning it. But that only supposes if the challenge is fair. All too often, games fail at maintaining this balance. If a game's too difficult at the outset, it drives players away as they're not given enough room to breathe and to figure things out. They're already trying to figure out the basic controls. They're not gonna be able to figure out how to wave dash in the same breath. Conversely, if a game doesn't have enough difficulty as it goes on, it starts to become boring, samey. The worst version of this is when the game decides that make number go bigger am good design. Sorry, let's get back on topic. Mecha BREAK is certainly a game that fully takes advantage of this principle. On the face of things, the game is fairly easy to break down mechanically. Depending on your mech, you either shoot with guns or hit enemies with a melee weapon. Sometimes it's both. You can fly around, and you have a small set of abilities that define your role. What really kicks things up a notch is the minute optimizations that you can perform to improve your chances of winning. Falcon is a mech that can turn into a jet to dominate the skies with fast movement, missiles, and a machine gun. A weakness to her jet mode is that it lacks that snappy turning her mech form does. But because you can freely swap between each mode, you can use her jet mode to cover extreme distances, changing back to her mech form for evasive maneuvers or quick turns, and then swap right on back to dominate the air again. Once you've gotten good at this skill, you're barely going to be taking any damage as you weave through hails of gunfire and storms of missiles. Tricera, my beloved, likes to take damage, stay on objectives, and stonewall enemies from accomplishing theirs. You would think that the most optimal way to play him would be to transform into his fortress mode where he gets absolutely juiced with self-heals and a shield to block incoming damage. However, there's really only so much punishment that you can take before you just wake up in heaven. Properly mastering Tricera once again requires you to fully take advantage of his two modes. Despite his relative slowness, he can still dodge a lot of incoming damage by using his boosts to jump all over the place. Between how tanky he is in his fortress modes and actually dodging attacks coming his way, you can absolutely lock down an objective from being captured even if you're at a numbers disadvantage. The same runs true for every mech. Despite being simple on the surface, There's a lot of intricacies to be discovered with all of them, and all it takes is for you to experiment with the knowledge that you have with their kits. Once you've mastered all, then you'll really become an ace pilot. What makes this even better is that the game also has a shooting range, where you can practice every mech against any mech of your choice and even against a bunch of non-playable enemies. PvE? What I'm trying to hammer home is that, by all accounts, the game does a wonderful job at letting players explore their options and see what they like before they start getting sweaty at higher ranks. It allows players to become masters at their own pace and is nothing short of amazing. This is one of my favorite parts of good game feel, often referred to as the juice. This is the part of game design where devs make things look, sound, and feel sexy. To get this effect, they employ a lot of different techniques that all come together to make the game very aesthetically pleasing. Otherwise, everything just ends up feeling limp. Okay, I'll stop. Out of all the categories so far, this is one of the most subjective ones, and it's the one that most people recognize as soon as they start playing the game. It's that initial delight that you get from moving your characters around that makes you go, ooh, that felt good. It's the weight of your character being conveyed as they change directions. It's the kickback of a rifle as you shoot it, and it's the crunching of bones and the tearing of flesh as you rip and tear into the forces of hell. In a game like Mecha BREAK, I believe it's one of the most important parts to nail. I mean, what is a mecha game if you don't feel like you're a several-ton hunk of metal barreling through the battlefield against other war machines? You'd be Gundam Evolution, that's what you'd be. The game does an absolute banger job of translating that fantasy. It's the fact that you can see your mechs ice skating along the ground when you're not using your boost. It's the fact that you can color nearly every part of your mech to make it entirely your own. It's the fact that the momentum of the heaviest units are translated so beautifully when they land on the ground with a satisfying thud. I absolutely love it when a game nails this. It's when they do their absolute best to sell you that fantasy that really immerses me into the game. Otherwise, we'd all just buy the blocky fighty shooty game starring Square Man and his friend Mr. Rectangle. But we're not really here for that. We're here to be in mechs and fight other people in mechs. And if there's nothing else that you take away from this video, it's the fact that this game absolutely deserves praise for selling that fantasy. The hardest part of making this video was stopping myself from playing the game because it's just that cool. But the important question still stands. How does it all come together? It doesn't really matter how good a lot of individual parts of a game are if they don't add up to a complete experience. It's completely frustrating having to deal with a lot of annoying bits just so you can get to the parts you actually want out of the game you're playing. If the video so far hasn't made it very clear, every aspect of the game absolutely runs well together. The controls, the learning curve, the sounds, the sights, the feel, it's perfect. So those are my thoughts on Mecha BREAK. It was such a treat to get my hands on the beta, and with it closing soon, every day is going to be spent in absolute pain as I wait for it to come out, but I can at least rest easy knowing that the absolute fundamentals of the game are in a solid spot. I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on the game's future as it is nothing short of amazing. There are a few points outside of the actual gameplay that I am concerned about though. The modding system and the fact that the mechs can be found within the battle pass have a very pay-to-win feel to them. I'm really hoping that this will be addressed before the full game comes out. There are also a few mechs that are just a little bit too strong right now. Panther being able to just gib light mechs while being one of the fastest units in the game is a bit much. Beyond those gripes though, the game is so good. I want to see it succeed when it comes out, and I hope you guys give it a try. If you guys want to support the channel, you can either subscribe down below, or you can support the content directly by checking out the Kofi link down below. You don't have to give any money though, I'll be making the videos regardless. I want to give a shout out to Queen Volcanica. I was on her stream a few days ago where she interviewed myself along with a number of other content creators. You guys should catch her stream sometimes, it is an absolute blast to be there, and if you guys want to find new people you want to watch, now's your chance. With that out of the way, you guys stay safe, stay hydrated, and most importantly, I hope you all take care of yourselves.